The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Trey Hendrickson has his money.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast.
Now we get to talk about what Trey Hendrickson has agreed to, why it makes sense for both sides, why it doesn't make sense for both sides, and what this means for Trey's future in 2026. And James, let's start with your initial takeaways. Trey is going to be playing. That's obviously good, right?
Well, yeah, let's start there. Is the Bengals have started the year 0-2 in each of the past 3 seasons, 22, 23, and 24. They've talked all offseason, literally since January, whatever it was, when Zach Taylor fired Lou Anarumo and the rest of the coaching staff that he didn't want around anymore and thought they needed to move on. He said, we have to start faster. Well, it's hard to start faster when you have a distraction. And Trey didn't want to be a distraction, but guess what? When your best defensive player isn't playing, it's still a distraction. It's a distraction to everybody. And when you're hoping your defense is better under Al Golden and significantly better, guess what? It is a distraction. It's hard to win. It's hard to get stops. It's hard to feel like that you can be the defense that I think they're hoping and expecting to be. And so it is huge news. And we're going to dissect this for sure. And this won't be the only time we cover it. But it's huge news to know that Trey Hendrickson, the NFL sack leader, an all-pro defensive end, a guy who finished second in Defensive Player of the Year last season, and has had the best 2-year stretch of his career over the past 2 seasons, that he's going to be in stripes, happy, ready to go, and have 2 weeks to practice before that opening game against Cleveland. It's funny. I remember saying like August 22nd is my deadline, kind of in that range. They got pretty close to it. And there's a lot of not so good, I would say, when it comes to this deal. But the good is for the 2025 Cincinnati Bengals, you're going to get a Trey Hendrickson that should be ready to go week 1, distraction free.
I always thought Trey Hendrickson was playing this year. The good is that I guess, it's done earlier than I thought it would be done. I thought we'd be talking about this until next Thursday. And it's nice that it's done now instead of later. He gets to do the whole 2 weeks of practice, ramp up a little bit. Honestly, wouldn't be surprised if he's somewhat limited in that first game of the season from a snap count perspective. Wouldn't be surprised if he's not limited from a snap count perspective in that first game of the season, just because he has missed all of training camp. And so they still have all of that not done for Trey Hendrickson, all of that conditioning and all that buildup that Trey Hendrickson didn't get to do. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's somewhat limited in week 1 from a snap count perspective as they ramp him up. But again, like I said, with the way he works, wouldn't surprise me if there's no limitation either. The nitty gritty of this deal, James, is that it is reportedly a $14 million raise for Trey Hendrickson in 2025 with another $1 million in incentives, according to Adam Schefter, if Trey's out there for at least 60% of the team's defensive snaps and the Bengals make the playoffs. So it could be a $15 million raise for Trey Hendrickson. It essentially adjusts his previous 1-year extension, which was 1 year, $21 million, and now it's 1 year, $35 million. You had the $14 million raise. So to me, James, I think Trey wins here. If you had to say one side wins, one side loses, whatever it is, Trey gets a raise for a year that he was already under contract and gives up very little in return. The Bengals must have believed him when he told them repeatedly he was not going to play this year on his current deal. They also wanted to reward him. I think that's part of it too. But there's not much upside here for the Bengals. They, I guess, don't have any commitments to a player that they're worried about being on the wrong side of 30. I guess that is something they would consider a win. They get Trey Hendrickson on the field. That's obviously good. Like I said, I think that was going to happen regardless at some point this year. But I have a hard time seeing this as something that isn't Trey Hendrickson at least getting something here. He didn't get what he wanted, which was multiple years of security, but he got something in exchange for playing in a year that he was already under contract.
Sure. And that's the win. He gets paid. He gets to be with his teammates. He gets to play out this year. Here's why the Bengals did it. And why I think it's a win for the Bengals. It's the opposite for me. They didn't commit anything long-term. They didn't have any problem paying Trey this year. They were worried about paying Trey in 26 and 27, and certainly 27. And if he's good this year, well, guess what? We're right back here. And in that's what's surprising to me about the Trey situation. If he has 15 sacks this year, he's not hitting the market. Doesn't mean I've seen some of the insiders and I think Trey's camp expects, he's going to hit the market. Why would he? What would lead anyone to believe that he's going to actually become a free agent? That doesn't mean he's going to be on the Bengals. Maybe he won't be. Maybe they won't want to deal with it. Maybe they get an asset for him and go that route. But he's still able to get franchise tagged. That tag is going to be reasonable based on projections, comparatively speaking to what Trey's contract is and what his demands would be. If he plays really well this year, it would not shock me. Regardless, and they do have enough cap space to do it. They're projected to have like $64 million in cap space as of now. Obviously, that'll change. So that's what's so interesting to me is he doesn't get that long-term security, and it kicks the can down the road. And we're going to be having this discussion if he plays well in February. We are guaranteed.
Yeah, that was a big question that I think a lot of people had. Is there a no tag clause in this contract? According to Jordan Schultz, there is no tag clause. According to Diana Rossini, the Bengals had a 3-year, $95 million offer for Trey Hendrickson. That was the multi-year offer. And I think that includes 2025. So that's a 2-year extension that would be 2025, 2026, 2027 for a total of $95 million in new money, plus what he was already in line to make this year, which will put him right around $35 million a year. But when there were no guarantees in year 2, or at least not adequate guarantees in year 2, Trey Hendrickson didn't want that. And that sent them back to the drawing board, back to the table, and is why they land on a 1-year pay raise, no extension for Trey Hendrickson that has him in line to be a free agent or get franchise tagged. And we'll have to talk more about that possibility because I think that is definitely going to be something that is going to be a consideration next year. At the very least, a tag and trade and doing this whole song and dance again.
August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Perhaps you believe the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, or maybe you have a division winner, dark horse you'd like to parlay. Maybe the Broncos and the Seahawks. You'd get some juicy odds on that if you wanted to do it. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
Like I said the other day, there was no need to keep Kenny Pickett.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast.
Yes, it did happen. It's official. The Browns traded Kenny Pickett last night to the Las Vegas Raiders for a 5th-round pick in 2026. Now, I want to explain a little bit what happened here because I initially thought this was the path of how things would play out. I thought that Kenny Pickett would end up the odd man out. I thought he should be the odd man out pretty much from the beginning of this competition, despite what was being reported about the fact that the team really liked Kenny Pickett and thought he had a legitimate shot at winning the starting job. That obviously got derailed by the hamstring injury. And in recent weeks, I had pivoted to believing, okay, they're going to keep all 4 quarterbacks. And that was real. That was real. They were okay keeping all 4 quarterbacks. And I think you got those sentiments from Andrew Berry on the broadcast over the weekend where he told Chris Rose, like, it's not even a decision for us. It's easy. We feel good about it. Whatever. Like, they were ready to keep 4 quarterbacks. I wholeheartedly believe that in my heart of hearts, based on what I know, based on the things that I've heard. And so because of that, I think you're looking at a situation that was things change, and they change quickly in this league. And what changed was you had a team that was desperate enough to pull the trigger, to give the Browns what they were asking for, to get a backup quarterback. And that was the scenario that we talked about all offseason, potentially being the way that you whittle down this quarterback depth chart, right? It was this idea that you get to training camp, there's always injuries, there's always guys that get hurt, and then maybe a team gets desperate enough that they're like, you know what? We need that guy. Let's go make a trade. And that's what happened with the Raiders, with Aiden O'Connell suffering the wrist injury. That essentially cleared the path for them to need a backup quarterback. That became a big priority for them. And here they were pulling the trigger, sending a 5th-round pick back to Andrew Berry to get Kenny Pickett out there. Aiden O'Connell is going to miss about 6 to 8 weeks, so this makes a lot of sense for them. They can get somebody in quickly, acclimate them, all those different things. And so after trading a 5th-round pick plus DTR and the initial deal to the Eagles to get Kenny Pickett, this essentially makes the deal a wash for the Browns, who now have 10 picks in 2026. That falls in line with what we've heard Jimmy Haslam say about how this team was focused on accumulating draft picks and how they were going to continue to try to do that. So like I in terms of like the haul, in terms of this kind of coming to fruition, I do think it's a win for the Browns. It's a win for Andrew Berry. I get it. You're going to look back and say, well, they gave up more than what they got back in return for Kenny Pickett. And that's fair. But also DTR was just released by the Eagles. So it's not like the Eagles got some massive asset out of Kenny Pickett that now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you overpay. I mean, he's now free to sign basically anywhere. Like if the Browns really wanted to add him back, they could. Maybe they'll sign him to the practice squad for all we know. Who knows? But you know, it's an interesting situation. Yes, I get it. It's unique in that way. But to get a 5th-round pick back and basically just replenish the pick that you gave up, you essentially only traded DTR for Kenny Pickett in the end. Like it was basically just like a quarterback swap, if you will. And so from that standpoint, like it's a win. And I do think, again, I want to reiterate, like that they were planning on keeping 4 quarterbacks. That was going to be the direction they were going. And then circumstances changed, as they tend to do in the NFL. And the Raiders are willing to pay up what Andrew Berry was looking for. I think the fact that the trade ends as a wash is awesome. And I also think it speaks to the fact that aside from the Quinshon Judkins unexpectedly winding up in a legal situation that he was in, and that's still sort of playing out right now where he's not signed, not at camp, all those different things. This has been arguably Andrew Berry's best offseason since he's been with the Browns. Now, that does take some projecting here by what we think these rookies are going to do and what we think these rookies are going to be. But I think I can say this, I think right now, based on what we've seen at training camp and throughout the preseason, I feel really good about Carson Schlesinger and Mason Graham basically being like 2 defensive studs for this team. And those are your first 2 picks. And if they short up 2 spots there, if he nailed those 2 picks, like you already feel pretty good about that situation in general. Quinshon's not here, and again, that's the biggest blemish to his class that he signed. But without I've been harping on the fact for months that I thought Quinshon was ready to be that lead horse back to sort of assume that role, his play style, running like Kareem Hunt, all those things I brought up over this past year. Make me believe that when he is out there, he has a chance to be great, especially in this system and in this offense. So I feel good about the prospects of him eventually being good. It's just going to take it's going to take longer than anybody expected to get him in the building and ready to compete and play and contribute to this team. And then beyond that, like, I think you have some other pieces in this draft class that you answered. Harold Fannin Jr. seems like he's going to make a major impact. He's going to be very involved in this offense. If one of the quarterbacks at least pans out, you feel like you maybe find a guy that's at least a long-term backup for you, if not your franchise quarterback. I hope it's the latter. And then like this would be a knockout of the park draft class just in general. And then that's on top of the fact that like I've mentioned that I think the Malik Collins move was a slept on move by this team. I think adding him to the defensive line has been as we've already seen the impact of that. I think we're going to see it in the regular season. He's a great player. And it sort of, again, goes unnoticed, but he's good. He's a good player. I think Cornelius Lucas could end up being a pretty strong swing tackle for you. They did a lot with a little. And I do think in that respect, like Andrew Berry deserves some bit of, I get it. He's had bad drafts. There's a lot of reasons to be critical of Andrew Berry to this point in his tenure. But I do think this year he, as I said, took lemons and tried to make lemonade the best he could with what he had. And I think there's a chance that this could set the foundation for the team moving forward if they get Quinshaw in the building at least, and if this regime has time to see it through, like it could be the thing that sort of turns the franchise around and gets things back on track. So a lot of reason for optimism. I'm not going to sit here and say like Andrew Berry's totally redeemed himself and he shouldn't, his job shouldn't be at stake if the team has another bad year, any of those things. Like he's in this spot because of decisions that he's made to this point, including the Deshaun Watson trade, which he's going to have to wear for the rest of his career. And so those things they're not forgotten by any stretch, but I do think this is setting up to be, especially if you get a couple foundational pieces here that are contributing for the future and you save your job because of it. And you get another go around next year to have another draft class that can maybe blend in with this one to be your future. I think this has the potential to go down as Andrew Berry's best offseason. And this Kenny Pickett trade to get a 5th round pick back after giving up a 5th round pick and basically only losing DTR over it, who's now a free agent or is going to be available for anybody to sign off of waivers. Like, I think it's another positive move for Berry this offseason. And I think he's set this organization in the right place to go through this transition and maybe be set up for the future and longer term if it all works out. Now I use the word if, like we still have to see it, but I do think that this right now looks like it's trending to be Berry's best offseason that he's had here. And that's good news if you're hoping that he can sort of salvage this thing and get the train back on the tracks and get the Browns going in the right direction. We'll see. But man, like I was stunned by this because I was convinced in my heart of hearts they were going to keep all 4. But as I said, circumstances change and he was able to swing a deal with the Raiders. It makes sense that they were calling. I even mentioned it on yesterday's show that maybe there was now this market for Kenny Pickett. And what do you know? It emerges. Kenny Pickett's going to Las Vegas. By the way, circle your calendar for November 23rd. Browns at Raiders. Could we get a Kenny Pickett revenge game? We shall see. But we can't talk about this situation without also highlighting the fact that the Browns quarterback plan finally makes sense. Hallelujah.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
One of the biggest news that just dropped, honestly, like a half hour ago, because the big question was Aiden O'Connell obviously out. He injured his wrist. He's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. And then the big question was, well, who's going to be QB2? Because Cam Miller looked like a rookie, right? Despite that, first preseason game where I was the one, I didn't know Aiden O'Connell's beehive would come after me, but they did. And, then there was the question, well, who's going to be QB2?
Right.
And they pick up Kenny Pickett. And the Browns ended up releasing him. And Kenny Pickett, you guys, if you guys are just wondering some information on him, because he does have some experience, and that is what Pete Carroll said that he wanted. He wanted to bring in someone with experience. There were so many names thrown out. But as for Kenny Pickett, the Browns were ready to release him. He played in 13 games with the Steelers in 2022. He started 12 times. In 2023 with the Steelers, he started 12 games. In 2024 with the Eagles, he played in 5 games, had 1 start. And according to ESPN in their 2024 rankings, he had 291 passing yards. That tied him for 53rd, 2 touchdowns, tied him for 49th, and 1 interception. So he does have some experience there, guys. Obviously, 30 games, 25 starts. As for his touchdown to interception ratio, 15 touchdowns, 14 career interceptions. What were your guys on the thoughts of them going for Kenny Pickett? Because they made a move to get a quarterback instead of picking up a quarterback off the waiver wire. Q, we'll go with you first. Just your thoughts on who they brought in to be QB2?
Well, I think you said it with best when you said experience, and being on the conference call or the Zoom meeting yesterday with head coach Pete Carroll, that was what he emphasized over and over again, right? That he wanted someone with experience. And for everyone that was saying Cam Miller should be the guy, I asked him specifically, what did you want to see from Cam Miller that put him in position to be the backup quarterback? And he said, well, a couple of years of experience. So that kind of ended the conversation that a lot of people had about Cam Miller could be the guy. He clearly can't be. He's not ready yet. He's a rookie. He just has a handful of snaps under his belt, not even starts. He has snaps under his belt. So not an opportunity for him to be the backup quarterback. And so then you wonder, where are they going to go? What direction do they go? So then they make the trade for Kenny Pickett, right? Just happened a little while ago, as you mentioned, 5th round pick. For me, and Lincoln, correct me if I'm wrong. For me, if you're giving up a 5th round pick, he's going to be your backup quarterback probably for the year. He's not going to be a guy that's going to be your backup quarterback for 6 to 8 weeks while your backup quarterback is healing from a wrist injury. Sounds like Kenny Pickett's going to be the backup quarterback because you gave up capital. You gave up draft assets to get him in return. So to me, it feels like Kenny Pickett's going to be the backup quarterback, and we might not see Aiden O'Connell again.
Over the weekend, Sam Howell and now was traded from the Minnesota Vikings to the Philadelphia Eagles to play backup. Has experience in the league, a notable quarterback. And then the same thing for Kenny Pickett. Look, the Raiders needed to make a move because when Adrian O'Connell went down, they were left without a true backup quarterback. And much to Q's point, Cam Miller is a project. A project that's going to take some time to develop. There are things that he's got to learn. You saw the last 2 games after that performance against Seattle. The last 2 games, how he took his lumps. He took some lumps, and so he's got some growing to do, which is natural. It's a different game. It's a different aspect. Offenses, defenses are still pretty much the same, but they're played differently with a lot more different speed. So Kenny Pickett does have the chance to come in and play for number 2, and the Raiders had to have that. Geno Smith has a history of injury history, not necessarily pronounced the way he can't play, but there's times he hasn't been on the field, haven't been available. So you got to have a capable backup. And without that, what I was most surprised with, and I know we'll have a reflection moment of the game, what I was most surprised with is that, and I know it's in the past, but they didn't let Aiden O'Connell go with the one offensive line.
Yep.
And the only reason I bring that up is because there's a big drop off from the starting offensive line to the 2s and the 3s. Okay. And
we saw it.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've been talking fast about it. So, I don't know if it was done on purpose, necessarily not to let him shine or whatever, diminish some of his shine if you had plans for him. But unfortunately, he's back now he's hurt again and he's out for a significant amount of time and you're left scrambling. along with playing these numbers games. So, it's interesting how these things happen and the way they sort of fall in shape. But the Raiders did not look good the other night.
Yeah, and I think for a guy like Aiden O'Connell, who has, ride or die supporters, I'll say that, guys. I think for him, it's a little bit upsetting because you don't want to see him go out like that. But I felt like he was one of the guys that regressed, unfortunately. And then you never want to see anyone get injured. And this is not how you want it to turn out. But I think them bringing in a guy like Kenny Pickett and, moving an actual piece, yeah, it seems like they're going to go with him for the rest of the season at least. And then I do still believe they did release some cuts, but I do still believe that they're going to rock with Cam Miller and he'll be part of the 53-man roster as well, because they also talked about still wanting to develop him. It was just kind of like reps because we saw Cam Miller be a rookie in that preseason game, and that's fine because he just has to get reps. My question to you guys is, do you guys feel like this will be a good fit for a guy like Kenny Pickett? What do you think, Link?
Former first round pick, has some value. I've never really watched him close enough because I thought that sometimes when you throw rookies into the fire, they either make it or they cook, they burn up. And so it's the deliberation, the jury is out on Kenny Pickett to me, but he's with his fourth team in 3 years,
right?
Or whatever.
Tells you a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
tells you a lot. What I don't like about Kenny Pickett, and maybe not like is the wrong way to word it, but when they decided to bring in Russell Wilson to the Pittsburgh Steelers, he asked for a trade instead of saying, hey, man, okay, they're bringing this guy in. This guy's got a history of being injured. I can battle it out. I'll be ready when my number's called, right? Instead of pulling your best Aiden O'Connell impersonation, he asked for a trade. I'm not a big fan of that personally. Again, it's just me, my preference. I rather a guy that, okay, he was a former first-round pick of the Steelers, so unless they told him behind closed doors, hey, there ain't no room for you here, I thought he should have battled it out with Russell Wilson. And you saw what happened. He got injured right away. I would have liked to seen that fight from him just to know what he's kind of made of instead of just, hey, I want to trade, get me out of here. And then he went to Philadelphia and backed up Jalen Hurts. And you're not getting on the field unless it's in mop-up duty, or unless Jalen Hurts goes down. And, then he gets traded to Cleveland. And now he's traded to the Raiders. So he goes from traded from Pittsburgh to Philly, traded from Philly to Cleveland, now traded from Cleveland to the Raiders. I mean, I think he's going to be a glorified backup throughout the course of his career. The good thing that he has going for him is that he does have that experience, but as far as I'm concerned, that's what he has going for him, is experience. It's not a whole lot of great play. I think the last time that the Raiders played the Steelers and he was the quarterback, the Raiders actually should have won that game. I think that was Derek Carr's last game with the Raiders, where there was about 3 degrees out there and it was freezing cold.
Yes, I remember.
My bad. Didn't mean to bring up.
No, it's all right. It's all right. No. It's all right. But here's the thing: because the Raiders are scrambling, that Geno Smith is your starter, but you got to have someone just in case, obviously, right? And it's better to have someone who's experienced rather than someone who's raw. And I think that's what you're approaching right here. Who knows whether or not Aiden O'Connell ever surfaces back in a Raider uniform? I just think that for what it's worth, I think he's capable. I think he struggled at things, but also, for what it's worth, I don't think he ever felt comfortable. I looked at him in this last game. I didn't think, for the short amount of time he was out there, I didn't think he felt comfortable. Of course, he's still holding the ball too long. Again, these are emotions that are going to be either fleshed out or they're going to do you in. That's what players have to deal with. Either you can take the criticism, either you can take the ray that you're going to see out in front of you and be able to play on that level, or you're going to move on. Right. Aiden O'Connell will still fetch a value. Somebody will like him too in the other scouting departments. It might give you something for him if that's what you want to see, but you got to have a capable backup. And for what it's worth, before the waiver wire went, where you had a bunch of teams scrambling for guys, before that happened, the Raiders made a play and gave up a 5th round pick, which is not really that big.
So the question for you guys that I have is, are you guys feeling more confident with the quarterback room? Like, there was a lot of quarterbacks that could have been available, and they went with someone that I wasn't even thinking they were going to go with, to be honest with you. I thought they'd go for a guy like Tyler Huntley. And I thought if they were going to move a piece, go for a guy like Marcus Mariota, who's already been in the silver and black, has the experience with Chip Kelly. So this was kind of like left field for me, to be honest with you. What were your guys' thoughts, though?
Well, I'm interested. Why were you so intrigued by Huntley?
Because I think the fact that he's also a mobile quarterback.
Okay.
And he does have the experience. He's a young guy. And then putting him behind Geno, like, one of Geno's best qualities is actually what he does off the field as a leader. Mm-hmm. That's one of his best qualities. Like, if you actually look at what he did in Seattle, like, he really had that locker room, right? And I think being behind a guy like Geno is so important for a young quarterback. And a guy like Tyler Huntley, like he's not going to wow you, but you can also use him as a mobile quarterback. He was great in college at that.
No,
right?
he was.
So,
I covered him at Utah. There's no doubt about it. But the thing is that sometimes with running quarterbacks, that's the first thing that pops in their mind when their reads are down.
Yeah.
And that you run a risk of getting injured there. You know what I mean? And that's my only issue. And besides that, there's a lot of times where offensive coordinators, when they have mobile quarterbacks, will instill plays for them, which are different than what your other plays. For example, you would not have Joe Flacco of the Browns doing the same thing as Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
It's a different skill set, different approach, different accuracy levels and stuff like that. So, and that's what I'm talking about. So you don't want to get into where you're creating too many game plans. If you get somebody on the free agent wire or you trade for somebody, you much rather want them closer to what you have right now. So that way you keep everything the same and not having to create a whole new game plan for a specialized player.
Yeah.
No, and see, for me, Snoop Huntley was one of the guys I was looking at as well because he was available. I didn't know if the Raiders were going to be willing to trade for someone. I didn't know how invested they were in that backup quarterback position, not named Aiden O'Connell. Again, when I see that you're giving up a 5th-round pick, and I know that it's not the a super high pick, but it's still a 5th-round pick. It's still Nate Hobbs. It's still Hunter Renfrow. It's still Richard Sherman. It's still, those are notable 5th-round picks. It's still a guy like that. To me, it lets me feel like at least that the plan is not for Aiden O'Connell to rehab and come back and get his backup quarterback spot back. It means that Kenny Pickett's going to be your backup quarterback. I could be reading it completely wrong, and if I am, that's okay. But that's what it says to me, that, hey, this guy is going to be your backup quarterback. You give something up for this guy and not just pick up a guy that was available. Like I said, it tells me a little something. So that's why I feel like Aiden O'Connell's days are probably numbered with the Raiders now that they make this move.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see, what happens with the development of Cam Miller too. But the hopes is that we don't actually see Kenny Pickett or Cam Miller on the field. The hope is that Geno stays healthy throughout this entire season, and so we don't get to see them. Right? That's actually the hope. Any final thoughts, you guys, before we take a break and get into the next segment, because we still got a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, got a lot to get to. No, I mean, just, it's funny just covering this team and being around this team and being a fan of this team. It always sees, and it seems like, Lincoln, and you could tell me, the last preseason game and the first regular season game, there's always something going on with the silver and black.
Yes.
Always something going on.
No doubt. You're absolutely right. And the stuff continues. The stuff continues. It does continue what we're seeing right now. Absolutely.